Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be talking about solar ultraviolet radiation and skin protection, and this is brought to you by Assistant Professor Dr. Eugenie Tan from the School of Healthy Aging, Medical Aesthetics, and Regenerative Medicine, UCSI University. In this session, we'll be covering 5 topics. Firstly, solar ultraviolet radiation. Second, factors affecting UV distribution. Third, health effects on the skin. Fourth, ultraviolet index. Fifth, sun protection. There are 3 spectrums under the solar radiation. They are ultraviolet, visible, as well as the infrared. In the infrared spectrum, the wavelengths are 780 to 1 million nanometer. In the visible light spectrum, we have wavelength 400 to 780 nanometer. In the ultraviolet, we have wavelength 100 to 400 nanometer. In this session, we'll be talking about the ultraviolet spectrum. Solar ultraviolet radiation from the sun consists of UVA, UVB, and UVC. UVC is totally absorbed by oxygen in the stratosphere and does not reach the Earth. 95% UVB can be absorbed by ozone and air. Absorbance above 295 nanometer depends on wavelength and thickness of the ozone layer. UVA is not absorbed by the ozone layer, and it reaches the Earth. Factors affecting UV distribution. The first factor affecting solar distribution that we will look at is solar elevation, height of the sun. UV radiation is the highest when Earth is closest to the sun, such as early January when it's winter in the northern hemisphere and summer in the southern hemisphere. 4 hours period during noon, you will receive half or more UVB around this time. Located at the equatorial, you will receive 3 to 4 times more UVB than the Northern Europe. High altitude, as there is less atmosphere to absorb UV. Cloud cover. Spatial and temporal variability of clouds are the main reason why it's so difficult to accurately predict UV radiation. Thick, heavy cloud cover can block most UV radiation. Thin clouds can let most of the UV rays through. Fluffy and fairly weathered clouds are deceiving because they reflect the rays and can increase the amount of radiation reaching the Earth. Surface reflections. Grass reflects about 2% of UV during summer and 5% during winter. Next, we look at the surface reflection by the sun. Wet sand reflects 7% of UV, dry sand reflects 18% of UV. Fresh snow reflects 80% of UV, while old snow reflects 50% of UV. Sun protection is very important during skiing. Surface reflections, high altitude, and clear skies increases UV exposure. Health effects on skin. UVB effects on skin. UVB forms the intermediate wavelength of 280 to 350 nanometer of the solar radiation spectrum. UVB causes burning or erythema on the epidermis. Its exposure immediately results in skin redness and thickening of the stratum corneum. It causes superficial redness and painful irritations, which subsides after a short while. But underlying damages remains and accumulates, potentially causing basal cell and squamous cell cancers. UVA effects on skin. UVA forms the longest wavelength, which is 315 to 400 nanometer, and penetrates into the dermis. UVA causes aging of the skin, such as sagging, wrinkling, uneven skin tone, freckles, melasma, and sunspots. UVA exposure is linked to development of basal and squamous cell cancers, as well as precancerous lesions. Tissue damage from UVA is cumulative. Its effects will not appear until after years of exposure. Let's take some time to compare UVB and UVA rays and its effects on skin. UVB have longer wavelength than UVA. UVB have higher energy levels than UVA. UVB had been reported to form stronger links with malignant melanoma and basal cell carcinoma. But both wavelengths are capable of causing DNA damage in the skin, leading to skin cancer. Let's get to know some skin cancer facts. Skin cancer is Australia's most common cancer. Each year, skin cancers account for around 80% of all newly diagnosed cancers in Australia. Over 2,000 people receive skin cancer treatment daily in Australia. That brings us to about 750,000 treatments per year. 2 in 3 Australians will be diagnosed with skin cancer by the age of 70. Out of all these cases, it's estimated that more than 12,500 cases to be melanoma. Interestingly, melanoma is more common in men than in women. Men are more than 2.5 times likely to die from melanoma. And this fatality, it's about 2,000 cases per year. Melanoma is the 6th most common cause of cancer death in Australian men and 10th most common in Australian women. Let's take a quick recap with this video.
People diagnosed with skin cancer often ask, why did I get skin cancer? And what can I do to prevent my children from getting skin cancer? Those are excellent questions. For you to know how to prevent skin aging and skin cancer, you need to know about the dark side of the sun. Today, I want to share with you a deep dive into how the sun can accelerate skin aging and also increase the risk of skin cancer. When sunlight reaches the Earth's surface, it is made up of 3 main types of radiation. Infrared radiation is what gives sunlight its warmth. Visible light helps us see. And then there's UV light, a type of radiation that we can't feel or see. When it comes to the damaging effects of sunlight, UV is a major culprit. There are 2 types of UV that reach us on Earth's surface, UVA and UVB. Both types of UV can damage the skin, but in slightly different ways. Of the 2, UVB is the most damaging form of UV radiation. It causes sunburns and increases the risk of skin cancer. The upper layer of the skin is called the epidermis. Visible light from the sun is reflected off the epidermis, but UVB penetrates into it. In the epidermis, UVB reacts with the DNA of cells and causes DNA damage. Our skin cells are able to repair DNA damage, but with time, if enough DNA damage accumulates, skin cancer can form. In the epidermis, there are cells called melanocytes. When skin cells are damaged by UV, melanocytes release a dark pigment called melanin. Melanin is able to absorb UV light, and so the body uses melanin as a kind of UV shield. But melanin isn't able to completely stop skin damage from UVB. A skin tan is actually a sign that skin damage has already occurred and the body is preparing itself for further UV exposure. In a sunburn, UVB causes so much damage that the skin cells die and the upper layer of the skin peels off. The death of cells also triggers inflammation, making the skin red, hot, and painful to touch. UVA can also increase the risk of skin cancer, but mostly it is involved in accelerating skin aging. UVA is able to infiltrate down to the deep layer of the skin, called the dermis. The dermis has a scaffolding of molecules such as collagen that makes your skin elastic. When you pull on your skin, it is this scaffolding that helps your skin spring back. UVA damages this collagen scaffolding. This makes your skin more prone to wrinkling and sagging. It's not all bad news though. We know that sunlight in moderate amounts is helpful for making vitamin D, and that's what I talked about in my last video. Also, UV light prescribed by doctors can be helpful for immune-based skin conditions like psoriasis.
Introducing MSc Healthy Aging, Medical Aesthetics and Regenerative Medicine by UCSI University. The program, MSc Healthy Aging, Medical Aesthetics and Regenerative Medicine, is approved and accredited by Malaysia's Qualifications Agency. Among our selling points are the leading pioneer. UCSI is the first university in the world to offer a postgraduate program addressing all three fields of healthy aging, medical aesthetics, and regenerative medicine. Be recognized. The only master's pathway to obtain the letter of credentialing and privileging LCP in Malaysia. Profound learning experience. Guided by subject experts, access to the latest aesthetics equipment, and free hands-on session. About us. The school had received and educated more than 80 students from 12 countries. Our international students come from Libya, Iran, Myanmar, Nigeria, Sudan, Pakistan, India, Egypt, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and Iraq. Students are medical doctors from all walks of medical disciplines. We have from subspecialist to medical officer. Almost 100% of our students have met the passing rate. The school have graduated more than 150 medical doctors since our first graduation in 2013. What does our program cover? Healthy aging, exercise prescription, balanced diet, stress reduction, hormonal enhancement, supplementation, and many more. Medical aesthetics, injectables, light and laser, radiofrequency, chemical peels, microdermabrasion, and many more. Regenerative medicine, genetic engineering, stem cell therapy, cloning, artificial organ, nerve impulse continuity, and many more. Are you keen to join us? Our entry requirement for local students are MBBS or equivalent degree and valid annual practicing certificate. International students are required to have medical degree, valid practicing certificate issued by their own medical counsel, as well as IELTS Band 6 or TOEFL 550. Career prospects include entrepreneurial, practice, education, and research. Here is the career ladder and expected salary for Malaysian doctors. Financial aids. To date, approximately 150 million in Malaysian ringgit has been given out as scholarships and study assistance. Our university had been consistent with our financial assistance to students since the year 2011. Would you like to know more? Engage with us at email shamarm@ucsiuniversity.edu.my or call us at 03-9101-8880. Scan the QR code to join us on Facebook. Thank you for your attention. Hello everyone, welcome back to the second section of solar ultraviolet radiation and sun protection. This is brought to you by Assistant Professor Dr. Eugenie Tan from the School of Healthy Aging, Medical Aesthetics and Regenerative Medicine, UCSI University. We will be talking about ultraviolet index in this section. History of ultraviolet index. In the year 1992, Environment Canada scientists announced the Green Plan. Shortly later, in the month of May 27, 1992, the UVB Advisory Program was announced by Environment Canada, making it the first official forecast of UV levels. In the year 1994, United States developed their own UV index. In the initial stage, method of calculation and reporting varied between countries. In the year 1994, a global UV index was introduced by the World Health Organization and the World Meteorological Organization. It has uniform calculation and standard colors coding. A decade later, in the year 2004, the United States adopted the Global UV Index. A year later, both United States and Australia launched the UV Alert. It aims to raise awareness on the dangers of overexposure to the sun, particularly during days with intense UV radiation. Comparison of ultraviolet index before and after adoption of the global UV index. Are you able to tell the difference between the before and after? Initial UV index reported on the scale of 0 to 10, with 0 representing minimal and 10 representing very high. While in the global UV index, it uses the scale of 1 for low to 11 and higher for extreme. Additional differences include new color scheme, revised exposure categories, and different breakpoints between exposure categories. On top of that, the minimal category was removed, and an extreme category was added. Understanding ultraviolet index. There are 5 categories in the ultraviolet index, with 1 to 2 for low, 3 to 5 for moderate, 6 to 7 for high, 8 to 10 for very high, and lastly, 11 for extreme. Are you wondering, what is the ultraviolet index? The index is a unitless number expressed by multiplying the weighted irradiance in the unit watt per meter squared by 40. The daily maximum erythemal weighted radiance is averaged over a duration between 10 and 30 minutes. Let's take a look at the formula used to calculate ultraviolet index. Variability of UV index. Are you able to spot the peak in the year? Typically, UV index is the highest during summer. It can reach up to UV 12. The peak begins in the month of May to the month of August. Are you able to spot the peak in a day? UV index peaks from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. is the highest during noon, potentially reaching UV 12. UV index and sunburn time. UV index on 1 to 4 takes up more than 60 minutes to cause a sunburn, while UV index 4 to 7 causes sunburn in about 30 minutes. UV index 7 to 9 causes sunburn in about 20 minutes. UV index above 9 only takes less than 15 minutes to cause a sunburn. UV index and sun protection. Let's take a look at sun protection required according to UV index categories. Sunscreen and sunglasses are required at all times. When UV index categories are between medium and extreme, we are required to put on a broad hat, stay indoors during UV peak hours, and seek shade. When UV categories are between high and extreme, we are required to put on UV protection shirts. Bearing in mind that UV index at 11 causes sunburn in less than 15 minutes.
When the UV index hits 3 or above, you need to cover up. Because the higher the UV, the greater your chances of getting sunburnt and skin cancer. So when it's 3 or above, wear a hat, sunglasses, a long sleeve shirt and sunscreen, and seek shade where you can. Make the most of your day. Visit myuv.com.au for your UV forecast.
UV meters in action.
In Australia, life is great. It gets pretty busy too. When we're busy, we don't always remember those things we should be doing. One of those things is protecting ourselves from the sun. While skin damage is usually associated with hot weather, it's actually UV or ultraviolet radiation that causes skin damage such as sunburn and increases our risk of skin cancer. Many people aren't aware that UV levels and the subsequent damage to our health can be high even on cool or mild days. UV radiation is not hot. It is present every day, and therefore people often make the mistake of underestimating the damage they are receiving from the sun on cooler days. Cancer Council of WA produce large display format real-time UV meters designed to inform members of our community about the true UV risk. This information can really help in reducing our lifetime risk of skin cancer. The meters display a number on the International UV Index. When it is 3 or higher, sun protection is needed. Solar-powered and weatherproof, the UV meters are ideal for almost any location and setting.
How can I know the UV index for my location? A short video tutorial for you. Let's take a look at how various governments raise public awareness on UV index. In the UK, UV index is measured by the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. At their website, if we scroll down, we'll be able to select the location that we're interested to look at, followed by the date, and then we can click on Go. Once we do this selection, the data will be loaded into the graph below, where in this graph, we'll be able to look at the date and the UV index reading for every hour. In the US, UV index is measured by the United States Environmental Protection Agency. Similarly, in their website, if we scroll down, you'll be able to get the UV index reading. It's interesting that the US actually provides us with a 4-day forecast. So day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 4. With this forecast, we can actually plan our activities ahead of time. In the figure provided, we'll be able to see different color codings as per the US map. There's an indicator at the bottom of the figure where we can actually match our reading. Further down, we have UV index forecast for US cities. And this is particularly for the noon hour. As such, we're able to predict the highest UV for the particular day. And again, it is shown on a US map. In Australia, the UV index is monitored by the Australian Radiation Protection and Nuclear Safety Agency. The layout is roughly the same, where we can actually select a location, followed by the date that we're interested to look at. Interestingly, for the Australian website, you'll be able to see the calculated versus the measured. The dotted lines is the calculated, as well as the jagged lines is the measured. So if you move around, you'll be able to see if there's any variation between the calculated as well as the measured. Further down, it's the same data, but it's presented in a table for easy viewing. It is autumn right now in the Australia, so if you see the highest UV recorded for the day is actually 6.2. In the Singapore, UV index is measured by the Meteorological Service Singapore. Over right here, we'll be able to get some real-time data. So at 6:30 p.m., the data is 0. And over here, we have the graph for the entire day. So we have some very extreme data right here. So during noon in Singapore, UV index was 13, right? Around 12:15, data was 13. And we see a very, very sharp drop, a drastic drop to about 9, about 15 minutes later at 12:30. For Malaysia, I'm going to show you 2 web pages. This is the first one. UV index in Malaysia is measured by their meteorological department. So in this page, the first one, they have the Malaysian map and colored icons next to each of the city. That's what we can see right here. So we have red indicated for 2 cities. First is Bayan Lepas and second is Kota Baru. In the second web page, we have the UV index for the entire day, and again, it's one figure for each city, and we have the measured as well as the calculated as well. That's a very short tutorial for you.
Good afternoon, I'm Dr. Sundaraj. I'm working in Gleneagles Ampang Hospital in ED department. It's nothing about medication alone. It's also about your way of your life, changing pattern of your life, the food you take, knowing your body more, and your mindset. So when I was Googling, UCSI was offering a good deal at that point of time, together with 2 other master's programs, which is healthy aging and then regenerative medicine, which I have very minimal knowledge on that. So it was a good opportunity for me. The teachers were very supportive and encouraging, and they were all the way to teach you and guide you in all purpose. I had a derm lecturer in aesthetic. And yeah, she was very helpful. And other lecturers was very open-minded, like very helpful. As a doctor, we are based on medications, okay? We treat patient through medications. Our knowledge through diet, way of life on physical activities and keeping yourself healthy, your hormone changes according to your age, how to benefit with the supplements. I, as a person, as a doctor, I was having a very lack of knowledge on that. When I was introduced to all the subjects, when we were going through it, it's really helped me to treat my patients, okay, in a different dimension, different angle, not only through medications, but to teach them the way of healthy living, to say that you can get old healthily without disease. I'm not only prescribing medication for the patients, but I'm also teaching them to live healthy, to look forward to get aging healthily. And yeah, and I also applied to myself. Being a student back, very flexible, very knowledgeable. UCSI is different from others. They also have regenerative medicine, which is totally different from aesthetic. And they also have healthy aging program, which is really another side of medicine where very less people knows about it. Yeah, it's a good choice if you choose this program in UCSI.
Thank you for staying with us. We'll come back to the third session of solar ultraviolet radiation and skin protection, brought to you by Assistant Professor Dr. Eugenie Tan from the School of Healthy Aging, Medical Aesthetics and Regenerative Medicine, UCSI University, Malaysia. In this section, we will talk about sun protection. Sleep on a sun protection clothing. Ultraviolet protection factor UPF. Since 1966, American Standard Test Method has been developing standards for UV protective apparel. It aims to access the sunburn protection level of fabric and promote clear and consistent labeling for sun protection. Sun protection fabrics are designed to absorb or reflect the sun's UV radiation as a means of protecting the skin from damage. The rating system of fabrics specifies an ultraviolet protection factor UPF value. Are you able to compare these two figures? UPF offers protection to the skin compared to exposure without any protection. It prevents penetration of the UV rays into the skin. Let's take a look at this table that shows rating, percentage of UV block, and quality of protection. Taking for example UPF 50. A fabric rated UPF 50 permits only 1/50 of UV transmission, meaning if 50 units of UV falls on the fabric, only 1 unit will pass through to the skin. A UPF 50 fabric that blocks 49 out of 50 units of UV is therefore blocking 98% of UV rays. How to choose sun protective clothing.
One of the best barriers between your skin and the sun is clothing. Long pants and shirts with a collar and long sleeves are some of the most effective options, especially in darker colours. Look for a swing tag with the high ultraviolet protection factor rating to be sure you're protected.
Sun protection clothing. What makes a good choice? Here are 5 factors to consider: color, weave, fiber, wetness, and condition. For colors, white or pastel, vivid or bright are the best choice. Under weave, we should choose tightly woven and fewer gaps. Excellent choice of fibers are synthetic fibers, polyester, lycra, nylon, and unbleached fiber. The fabric should not be wet, should not be worn or faded. Slap on sunscreen. The American Academy of Dermatology recommends choosing a sunscreen that states the following on the label. Broad spectrum. This means the sunscreen can protect your skin from both UVA and UVB. This is important because both UVA and UVB can cause skin cancer. SPF 30 or higher. This indicates how well a sunscreen protects you from sunburn. Water resistant. While sunscreen can be water resistant for 40 minutes or very water resistant for 80 minutes, sunscreens are not waterproof or sweat-proof, and this requires reapplication. Types of sunscreen. There are two types of sunscreen in the market, namely physical sunscreen and chemical sunscreen. The physical sunscreen works like a shield. It sits on the surface of your skin, deflecting the sun's rays. The chemical sunscreen works like a sponge, absorbing the sun's rays. Examples of physical sunscreen are zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. Chemical sunscreen are made of oxybenzone, avobenzone, octisalate, octocrylene, homosalate, octinoxate. Opt for physical sunscreen if you have sensitive skin. Meanwhile, formulation of chemical sunscreen are easier to rub into skin and it doesn't leave a white residue. How to apply sunscreen. How to use stick and spray sunscreen. Slap on a broad brim hat. Sun protection hat. It's important to note any hat is better than no hat. Take a look at this figure and figure out what is less sun-safe and what is more sun-safe. The best choice would be tightly woven wide brim hat. Tightly woven hats with a 3 to 4 inch brim all the way around reduce direct UV exposure to the head, face, and neck by as much as 50%. How to choose sun protective hats.
A good hat will protect your face, head, ears and neck and can reduce UV radiation to the eyes by 50%. Broad-brimmed and bucket hats provide the best sun protection. Legionnaire hats also provide good protection. Baseball caps do not protect the face, head, ears or neck, so don't rely on these for sun protection. Pick a broad-brimmed hat with a brim of at least 7.5 centimetres. For the best sun protection, a tighter fabric structure is best. A fabric with UPF 15 offers good protection, while UPF 50 offers excellent protection. If you're wearing a bike helmet or hard hat, consider a brim attachment or Legionnaire cover.
Seek shade. Shade is one of the best and easiest ways to protect against UV radiation. Good quality shade can reduce UV exposure by up to 75%. Well-designed shade ensures that the outdoor space is comfortable, protects from direct and indirect UV radiation during summer, lets light and warmth in during winter, practical and environmental friendly. The figure here shows a comparison between a well-designed shade for summer and a well-designed shade for winter. It is the aim to achieve well-designed for both seasons. This is a well-designed shade. Can we discuss what we can see in this picture? So over here, they have got good vegetative cover where we can see trees around the area, and it's very useful, especially in the summer, because it can actually cool down the area. If you take a look at the pavement, we can see some green grass being planted on the ground. This is very excellent as well because it actually prevents the reflective degree of the UV rays. The design of the canopy actually takes into the consideration of shadows during the different time of the day. So overall, I would think that this is a well-designed shade. Portable shade. Portable shade includes tents, beach cabanas, and umbrellas. It is important to note portable shade provide limited protection from indirect UV radiation, but it can be an easy, fast, and economical solution. Let's take a look at this picture. In this situation, the umbrella, which acts as a portable shade to the man, will not be able to provide any protection against UV rays reflected from the beach sand. Slide-on sunglasses. Protecting eyes from solar radiation. 47% of sunglass wearers do not check UV ratings before making a purchase. This makes them uninformed buyers. On the other hand, 53% believe darker lenses are actually better. Another alarming truth is that 68% of light-colored eyes do not know that their eyes are actually more photosensitive. These are some of the truths that we must know. Darker lenses don't block more UV rays. Oversized or wrap-around styles prevent UV from entering at sides. Colored sunglasses do not block more sun, but can increase contrast. Polarization reduces glare from reflective surfaces but does not offer more protection from the sun. How to choose sun protective sunglasses.
How can you know for certain you're getting the best protection? There are heaps of different types of sunnies on the market, but you only need to remember a couple of simple points when buying a pair. Close-fitting wraparound sunglasses provide the greatest protection for your eyes from all angles. Polarized sunglasses reduce glare and make it easier to see on a sunny day. Check the swing tag to ensure your sunnies meet Australian standards. Some sunglasses can absorb more than 95% of UV radiation. Since eye damage from UV radiation builds over time, it's important to protect the eyes of children, which are particularly sensitive. Toy sunglasses won't do the trick. Proper sunglasses designed for babies and toddlers have soft elastic to keep them in place.
quick recap. Kindly complete the final quiz. Thank you for your participation.